What's going on, guys? Sticks here with the Token Minorities, bringing you another deck on Pokemon TCGO, and I promise I did not steal this from Aura. I have been sitting on this deck idea for a little while now and have finally had time to record with it, but that is a deck centered around Umbreon and Decidueye, it is covered much too little in my opinion, because this deck is actually really cool. But before I get into the deck, just a reminder that if you guys liked this video or found it helpful, please leave a like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button. Helps us out quite a bit and lets us do more cool stuff for you guys. And as for the question of the day, not really... I guess I can kind of do a question of the day. I know I normally don't necessarily do one on Tuesday, Thursday uploads, but considering that Guardians Rising is coming out this Friday, and on Tuesday, Thursdays, I usually ask you guys to leave me deck ideas. Leave me Guardians Rising deck ideas in the comment section below of this video. Like, I already have a laundry list full of them, but I want to see what cool combinations you guys are able to come up with. Again, I have a huge list, and I probably even already have some of the ones that you guys are going to suggest, but still, leave them down below. I love to see what type of cool things you guys have come up with before the set has really even come out. Well, it's come out with like pre-release and stuff like that, but on TCGO anyway. But on to the actual deck. Like I said, centered around Umbreon-GX and Decidueye, and this idea initially came to me when I was using the Espeon Decidueye deck, and I was like, well, if it works with Espeon, why wouldn't it work with Umbreon? And the more I play with it, the more I feel like, okay, so Espeon is able to take bigger knockouts. This deck is a lot more skill-intensive, in my opinion, just because you have to be very strategic and put a lot of thought into where you put, like, the 30 damage from Shadow Bullet, 20 damages from Feather Arrows, stuff like that. You have to think that out way in advance, and this deck is actually really cool in that regard, just because nothing is safe on the bench. Feather Arrows and Shadow Bullets add up so quickly, and Shadow Bullet, even though it only hits for 90, that is plenty, particularly when you pair it up with Decidueye. A lot of things will take the mirror match, for example, like against Umbreon or Espeon. Normally, it's like a 3-hit KO with Shadow Bullet, but all of a sudden, just one Feather Arrow turns a 3-hit KO into a 2-hit KO, so you're able to spread out damage more efficiently, and I really like this deck. I love damage spread. I love being able to put my opponent in a position where they have to be very careful about what they send up or what they play down, just because, it's just a couple Feather Arrows and a Shadow Bullet away from being knocked out. And if you're able to get set up efficiently, this deck completely shuts down decks that rely on playing like Eevee onto the bench and evolving up, or Cosmog, or other things that rely on small basic Pokemon. Just because, if you have 2 Decidueye and an Umbreon up, a number which is actually not that difficult to get up in my opinion, you can easily hit the bench for 70 damage per turn, which just takes out those little basics. So it's a really cool combination and functions very differently from Espeon, because what Espeon does is it takes bigger... it can hit for a lot more damage with Psychic. Just 2 energy on your opponent's active Pokemon, which, they usually have. You're hitting for 120, 150 if they have 3, and then you can divide GX to clean up a lot of KOs that you left on the board. While Shadow Bullet is more, okay, I'm just going to hit you for a little bit of damage at a time, but you know what? It's going to accumulate, and I'm going to all of a sudden be able to take like 4 prizes in one turn just by like Feather Arrowing one thing, Shadow Bulleting the active, knocking that out, and then Shadow Bulleting something on the bench, and boom, I have 4 prizes immediately right off that. So it's a really cool concept that I think deserves a lot more attention, and I highly encourage you guys to try it out in the next like 2 days before Guardians Rising hits. But anyway, on to the Pokemon. This is obviously Umbreon Decidueye. You guys know what Decidueye does. Feather Arrow, just placing damage counters, and then Umbreon with Strafe, Shadow Bullet, and Dark Call. All 3 are very good attacks, and yeah, that's basically what it's centered around. As for the numbers of Pokemon, running 4 Eevee and 3 Umbreon, you might be thinking, well, why are you only running 3 Umbreon? Actually, you're not thinking that, because you can already see the Jolteon here. But Jolteon helps out a lot with different matchups, like, well, particularly Yveltal, because Yveltal can give this deck problems because you're not able to necessarily hit that thing hard enough. You could run Flareon as another evolution, but I already feel like you have a good enough matchup against grass decks in general, because The more popular ones run, actually almost all of them, run Vileplume. Well, if they're playing Forest of Giant Plants, you're already able to take advantage of that in Decidueye. And if we're both under item lock, we have the better attacker overall in Umbreon. Actually, not just overall, I mean just, yeah, we have the better attacker because Decidueye for a Grass and a double Colorless hits for 90, while Umbreon for a Dark and a double Colorless hits for 90 and snipes the bench for 30. So I feel like you don't need to run Umbreon in this deck just because the matchup against Grass is already pretty good, just because you have the better attackers and you're able to take advantage of Forest of Giant Plants. However, if you feel like it's not, I would definitely encourage you to run a Flareon or a Vaporeon if you find the Volcanion matchup's bad. But again, I actually like the Volcanion matchup just because Shadow Bullet's able to take advantage of like the Shaymins that are on the bench, like setting up the Volcanions to be knocked out, stuff like that. So I actually really like those matchups, which is why the only Pokemon that I have in this deck is, well, the only extra evolution is Jolteon for like Mega Ray, Yveltal, all those guys who can cause this deck some problems, and also Lugia to a lesser extent. Speaking of Lugia, we are running one of those guys as well for Aeroball and Deep Hurricane. Just excellent card to have. If you're already running DCE, might as well slap a Lugia in there. I know Lugia is just going to be gone with Tapu Lele coming out, but I mean, Lugia, I'm glad it got its time to shine. I'm glad it was able to get into some decks and actually show that it is a really good card. I mean, Aeroball, X-Ball, Evil Ball, whatever you want to call it, that's always going to be a very meta attack and will always be something that is used to great effect in the meta game. 2 Shaymin, just because, I mean, draw cards, set up, all that. Again, Shaymin is going to be replaced a little bit with Tapu Lele. Yeah, I know Shaymin will not be replaced in the turn 1 explosion decks, but in many cases, Tapu Lele will just replace Shaymin and Lugia essentially with 1 card. I mean, yes, again, Shaymin will have its spot, and it is way too good of a card. I'm not saying get rid of your Shaymin. I'm just saying Shaymin will still have a presence, just not as much as it had in this metagame. And then we're running 3-3-3 of Rowlet through Decidueye. I would like to run 4-4-4, but then that puts us up to way too many Pokemon. And this deck does suffer a little bit from being clunky, but not too much. However, I do attribute that to the fact that we only have 3 of the Stage 2 and not 4. But again, try it out. Let me know what you guys have success with. As for the items, very heavy search options with this deck, running 3 Level Ball and 4 Ultra Ball, just so we can try to get Decidueyes out as quickly as possible, get Eevees, get Umbreons, get Shaymins. Just, this deck is like a pseudo turn 1 explosion. It's not like a Vileplume Decidueye deck where you're focusing on going through like 3/4 of your deck turn 1. This deck, I mean, is a little bit more conservative than that, but it definitely has the ability to get up 2 Decidueye and an Umbreon turn 1 in the right circumstances. So I decided to just go heavier with the line of search cards just for that. 1 Revitalizer in case we don't have a Forest up or we don't have a Rowlet down. We have to discard our like a Decidueye or a Dartrix, something like that. Just one way of being able to recur cards. Now, this deck does not actually run Super Rod. I thought about it, but I decided, well, I mean, I really don't need it that much. The things that I'm going to be discarding most of the time are going to be Decidueye line, and I have Revitalizer to get those back. I have DCEs that I can attack with Lugia and Umbreon. I have enough Darkness Energy that I don't necessarily need to Super Rod those things back in. So I decided against Super Rod, but again, try it out for yourself. Let me know if you guys found Super Rod to be more helpful than I did. 4 Trainers Mail, just help with consistency. Try to get those Decidueye up turn 1, try to be able to get Pokemon out, just try to get an optimal board setup turn 1. 4 VS Seeker to reuse all of our supporters. And then as for these supporters, instead of a 4-2, I'm running a 3-3 of N and Sycamore, just because this deck has enough evolutions that you don't want to discard, as well as, again, this deck has no recursion, so as a way to kind of remedy that, I decided to go with more of Shuffle Draw as opposed to Discard Draw. And don't get me wrong, Sycamore is still ridiculously strong. That's why there's 3 of them in this deck. However, just because I realized that I had plenty of hands that I didn't want to just Sycamore away, I decided to get rid of 1 Sycamore and add an extra N. But again, my opinion, let me know what line you guys like. 2 Lysandre, just because Lysandre is incredible, and especially in this deck, the way you're spreading around damage. I mean, you're going to have a Pokemon that your opponent has active that's going to be just out of range of being able to be knocked out with like a Feather Arrow or something like that, but you don't want to waste a Shadow Bullet on it, and you'll have something on your opponent's bench that has like 90 HP left to where you can't snipe it. So what you do is Lysandre that Pokemon that you want to hit for 90 and then be able to Feather Arrow and Shadow Bullet the other thing. Just Lysandre opens up so many plays with this deck because of the spread damage that you're able to do. And like I said, this deck I feel is a lot more skill intensive than the Espeon version. But don't get me wrong, the Espeon version is fantastic. I'm not saying that it is bad by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying that this deck requires quite a bit more planning and thinking about your moves and all your options, just because that 20 damage on one Pokemon could win you the game if you put it on a different Pokemon. So you have to think way ahead. And also Umbreon is more of a skill-intensive card. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to say that just because Divide GX is very skill-intensive as well. But the fact that you have spread damage on Umbreon as well as the ability to disrupt. Now, this deck is not reliant on disruption at all, so that means you have to time your Dark Call correctly in order to get the maximum value out of it, because in the right situation, it's absolutely devastating. Just wipe the field of your opponent's energy and be able to go from there. But use it in the wrong situation, your opponent's able to easily recover, and, well, you wasted a GX attack and a turn where you could have gotten more damage on the board. So this deck takes a lot of forethought and being able to recognize situations and when to use what. The tech supporter I'm running is Olympia, just for, like, okay, so I'm only running a couple Float Stones, which means Decidueye with 2 retreat costs can be Lysandred out and can be annoying. Also a combination with, like, healing up with Olympia, Float Stones, all of that. So Olympia is the tech supporter of choice. You can definitely run Hexmaniac. I just like the little bit of healing that Olympia is able to provide. 2 Float Stone to throw on Decidueyes or Shaymin or whatever. Just be able to have those on the bench, because we're not going to be attacking with Decidueye in this deck. You could run Rainbow Energy. I don't like it because you can't take advantage of Energy Evolution with it. So I decided not to run any Grass Energy at all. You can maybe run like 1 or 2, but I wouldn't suggest running any more than that, just because you all of a sudden won't have a Darkness Energy when you need it. But 4 DCEs, because Lugia, Umbreon all attack for DCEs, and then 6 Darkness, just so we can be able to take advantage of Energy Evolution and attack when we want to. So yeah, that is the deck. I've rambled for way too long. Let's go ahead and see this deck in action. Alrighty, we have found one against Jahan FNG, and with a I don't even know what type of deck it is. Looks like a bunch of different stuff, but either way, we are going to end up going second, which not ideal, but I mean, this deck can still stray first turn. It can still potentially get some potentially get the Decidueyes up first turn thanks to Forest of Giant Plants, which we do draw, by the way. I actually get a pretty decent hand. I'd be able to get an Espeon up turn 1, or not an Espeon, sorry, an Umbreon. I'm running a Dark Decidueye version, not an Espeon Decidueye version, but I'd be able to level ball for an Eevee and then just Energy Evolution it into an Umbreon and go from there. I mean, as long as I get a Float Stone. I really need a Float Stone because I don't want to manually retreat the Rowlet out of there, and I'd like to be able to attack this turn. But my opponent actually just Skylas for a level ball, I guess. Well, I guess they didn't want to risk being donked. And okay, we see the Fomantis. Well, if I can get... Okay, what do I need? Actually, I don't think there is a way for me to be able to win this first turn. So I take that back. I was going to say maybe if I can get 4 Decidueye, a Muscle Band, or a Kukui, and then be able to strafe. Be able to knock out the Cosmog and then strafe the Fomantis, then I have a chance to win. But my opponent actually just draws and passes, and this is great because I was kind of debating grabbing a Jolteon or a Dartrix with the level ball, but considering I just draw into the Dartrix, okay, I only have 1 Float Stone, but I have 4 DCE. That 1 Float Stone, I'm going to have to search for that sucker. But let's go ahead, play the Eevee down, go ahead and evolve it with Energy Evolution into an Umbreon, and then I'm probably just going to play down the Forest of Giant Plants to be able to evolve my Rowlet. And there we go. Okay, let's play that down. Evolve the Rowlet into Dartrix, and then just Sycamore away my hand, hopefully draw into some stuff that I can use. Well, I draw into a Decidueye, and a way to get another, well, at least another Dartrix up, so let's go ahead and level ball for another Rowlet, be able to play that sucker right down, evolve into Dartrix. And then if I can Shaymin for a Decidueye and a Float Stone, I'll be able to knock out this Cosmog. But, okay, unfortunately, I do not get that. I could go big. I could definitely go big right here. And just try to grab and go for a Shaymin to see if I can draw into another Decidueye. But do I want to play it big? Yes, I do. I definitely. I mean, I'm doing it live. I might as well go big or go home. Let's just play the Shaymin down. See if we can draw into that Float Stone and another Decidueye. Well, I draw into a Decidueye, but not a Float Stone. Unfortunate, however, I will be able to get 40 damage onto this Cosmog. Because, like I said, this Cosmog is the only thing that can beat me. I mean, I'm not worried about Lurantis at all, because that thing is just kind of a, well, it can hit for like 120. It can be kind of annoying with the Solar Blades, but if it Solar Blades, that means it's not powering anything up in the background with Flower Supply, so I really don't have to worry about that there. And okay, it's now a Cosmoem. I need to be able to figure out a way to knock this thing out. My opponent does find a way to retreat and goes for the Flower Supply. Okay, so my opponent luckily does not have a supporter yet. I get a Lysandre. Do I want to go for that, or do I want to just Sycamore away my hand? I think the play is to Sycamore, try to draw into a way of retreating my Decidueye. I do not. Maybe I can hit it again. I do not. So that's unfortunate right there. What I am going to do, I think I'm just going to cut my losses at this point. Attach a DCE and manually retreat into my Umbreon. That way, at the very least, I can start, like, strafing for extra 30 damage. I mean, I can always just Feather Arrow the Cosmoem, set it up to be knocked out by Shadow Bullet next turn, and yeah, I'm just going to hit the Lurantis for an extra 20, because if my opponent manages to evolve, then that extra damage that I did won't matter anyway. I mean, the extra 20 that I put on Cosmoem, really, I don't think will do much. Actually, will it? Let's see, we have 70... We have 70, and then we'd have 90, 90. No, it actually would not at all, because then that'd still be 250, which would allow me to knock out the Solgaleo. So just that extra 20 damage onto the Cosmoem would not have done anything particularly good for me. And so I decided just to throw it onto the Lurantis. My opponent had to waste a max potion anyway, so, I mean, it's not too big of a deal. But at this point, I can just go ahead and Feather Arrow that Lurantis twice, and then Shadow Bullet it, knock out the Cosmoem, the only threat to me really in this game. I mean, yeah, my opponent can go for a Attach an Energy and go for a Shadow, or not a Shadow Bullet, a Solar Blade, which would heal 30 damage. Ooh. Okay, so I was about to say, my opponent played down the Cosmog, but I would have been able to just double Feather Arrow into Shadow Bullet and knock it out, and, I mean, thus eliminating every single threat. So we got pretty lucky that my opponent was not able to draw anything. However, I still think the matchup was pretty decently in our favor, depending on whether or not I was able to get my Decidueyes and Shadow Bullets going before they got their Solgaleos. Well, before they were able to get their Solgaleos up and running, because Cosmogs are just sitting ducks on the bench that I can continually snipe down, and it's not a problem. So yeah, I mean, a decent first match, but way too short. Let's go ahead and try to find another one with this deck. Alrighty, we have found another one against Sonk 3 with a, actually kind of looks like an Umbreon Evolutions deck, because, I mean, you have the Dark, which this deck appears to be centered around, based on the coin, based on the deck box, at least what I think I saw the deck box. And then you have the Water and Lightning of the Vaporeon and Jolteon. So this could be an Umbreon mirror match, but different types of Umbreon. Because, I mean, theirs is more focused on hitting for weakness. Mine is focused on just sniping the bench down and being like, yeah, anything that you put on the bench is not safe. Hashtag give me those Shaymins. But, I mean, either way, I'd actually be really interested to see how this plays out. We do win the coin flip, meaning we will get to go first, and that is definitely something that I really like. I mean, I'd like it more if I was able to, you know, actually get something to start with and not just a couple Dartrix. I mean, this hand would be good if that was like a Rowlet, a Dartrix, a Level Ball, a Sycamore, and a Forest of Giant Plants. Then I'd be okay with that. This hand, however, is not bad. Could be much, much worse. I mean, I have Eevee. I can Level Ball for another Rowlet if I want. Then I can Trainers Mail. Hopefully get a draw supporter or some means of getting a draw supporter. Either way, I want to get my... Oh, okay, there's an N. So I'd be able to put those back into the deck. And wow. 2 of my Rowlet are prized. That blows. Wow, okay. That's unfortunate. But, okay, here. Got the Float Stone. That was something I had trouble getting last time. Got it first turn this time, but... Wow, 2 Rowlet prized. Ugh. I mean, yeah, that happens, but bleh, I don't like when that happens. And in this case, I will be able to get a turn 1 Decidueye, because I can Level Ball for one of my 3 Dartrix, which I happen to have. Well, first, let's Ultra Ball, get rid of the Umbreon and the Trainer's Mail to grab a Shaymin. There is another Float Stone in there, but there's also 2 DCEs that I wanted to make sure I had. Let's go ahead and Level Ball, grab a Dartrix. Wish I could grab another Rowlet, but unfortunately I cannot. Play that down, and then I will be able to Decidueye immediately. So, I mean, at the very least, we're able to get a turn 1 Decidueye, which is something I cannot complain about at all. And I do get the Darkness Energy, which is something that I definitely wanted. Yes, let's evolve into Umbreon, and booyah, there we go. So, got a Decidueye up turn 1, got an Umbreon turn 1. I'm going to go ahead and play the Eevee just because, I mean, just so I have, like, at the very least, something to put up as sack fodder, maybe something to bring up, maybe something to evolve an Umbreon later if I decide to recurse it. But either way, I mean, my opponent starts off with an Oranguru, which cannot be something that he necessarily wanted to start off with, so I'm actually completely okay with this. Goes for, oh no, please don't be hammers. Please just don't be hammers. Why? Why must it be hammers? But either way, we do see the Crushing Hammer. Luckily, he does miss. Serves him right. And, okay, all I need is to hit a DCE. I run 3 DCE in the deck, and I'm about halfway through it. So, I mean, it shouldn't be too hard. Let's just go ahead and grab a Shaymin. Increase my odds for this turn. I'm kind of giving up on drawing into the Rowlet at this point. But if I get a DCE, I actually just straight up win the game. I mean, I flat out win the game right here if I'm able to grab my DCE. So let's go ahead and just Float Stone the Umbreon, because why the heck not? Ultra Ball, thin out the deck a little bit of cards that I really don't need. Grab the Lugia, and okay, I should be able to draw into a DCE right here. 17 cards. I don't draw into it. Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. 17 cards left in the deck, and I did not run into a single copy of DCE. Oh my gosh, that's frustrating. I had the win. I had the win right there. It was right in front of me. And I couldn't do it because I couldn't draw into one of my 3 DCEs. Oh, that is frustrating. That is so frustrating. But either way, my opponent is going to put an Eevee down. So this is an Umbreon deck that we're up against, which, I mean, we should have won, but we couldn't draw into a stupid DCE. Oh, I could cry right now. But, I mean, either way, I mean, okay, it makes it for a better match. You know what? I'm not going to look on the negative side. I'm going to look on the positive side. This is going to be a better match than just a free, cheap win that I needed as I'm closing in. Or, that I needed to finish the daily challenge. I needed that to finish the daily challenge, although, to be fair, actually, you know what? This is better anyway. This is better anyway. Allows me to get more damage, but that's frustrating. That's so frustrating. But, okay, my opponent does just attach Float Stone and Ultra Ball. So, yeah, my opponent is now able to start going off a little bit. We had the win, guys. The win was right there. It was right in front of us. They were passing the torch on to us, and we were just like, nah, I don't want it. But at least this way, my opponent is going to be able to, they will be able to strafe, will retreat into the Umbreon strafe. In Parallel City, I'm okay with this. It allows me to get rid of my Shaymins, and then what I can do is just replace that with a Forest, and yeah, have more room for Rowlets when I get them off the prizes. So, I mean, the match was won. I just didn't draw into what I needed to, but either way, it's all good. Let's go ahead and force a Giant Plant. Do I want a Sycamore, or do I want to end? I need an energy. I really do. But let's go ahead. I don't want to give my opponent another hand, but I just wish I could have drawn into an energy. So what I think I'm going to do is just go ahead and put the 20 damage on Umbreon, and then Dark Call. Just kind of buy myself a turn to try to get more to try to draw into an energy. That way I don't have to end my opponent to give them a new hand, but at the same time I don't have to discard Revitalizer, 2 Dartrix, and a Decidueye. So I'm just gonna Dark Call to buy myself a turn, be able to be like, okay, well, I'll still be able to Shadow Bullet next turn. I didn't just strafe for 30 on something that my opponent can just evolve up next turn. Right? Oh, exactly. So strafing would have been pretty pointless, as I can just Feather Arrow that Eevee whenever I want to be able to set it up for 2 Shadow Bullets. And yeah, I mean, like, I think that was the right play. Did not want to end because that'd give my opponent a fresh hand, which they're obviously lacking because they had to evolve into a Vaporeon, which especially in this matchup you would not want to do. I mean, unless they're running Rough Seas, because if they're running Rough Seas, I'll just tip my hat to them, because that's just a really cool tech. And if you get Vaporeon and Jolteon enough, then then you definitely deserve to. But okay, my opponent does just strafe. I'm glad I didn't end them still. Just sitting on that, and I do draw into a DCE, which, I mean, I don't necessarily want to play, but in this case, at least I will be able to still Shadow Bullet if my opponent decides to Dark Call me next turn. But at this point, let's go ahead and knock out that Oranguru with a Shadow Bullet, bench damage, and then set this Umbreon up to be knocked out by Shadow Bullet next turn after a Feather Arrow. Well, I wish I could have drawn into a Rowlet, but unfortunately, I do not. And yeah, we're in a great position. Even if my opponent Shadow Bullets me this turn, I still can knock him out next turn with a Feather Arrow from Decidueye, and then a Shadow Bullet from my active Umbreon. And my opponent ends me. I'm completely okay with this. Probably because I draw into a ton of energy, which, well, there are all my DCEs. Why couldn't you have been there earlier? But, oh no. Okay, good. So my opponent hits the Enhanced Hammer, but whiffs the Crushing Hammer. I'm okay with this, but he will be able to Shadow Bullet me. That is fine. At least I did draw into the Olympia, which is something that I'm actually pretty happy that I drew into. All right, Trainers Mail, get me anything good. You got me an N. Well, I actually think I can work with this. Because it could give my opponent new hands, but at least I have a Shuffle Draw for later. Let's go ahead and Feather Arrow that Decidueye, or that Umbreon, put it in range of being knocked out by a Shadow Bullet. And I am going to attach the DCE instead of the Darkness Energy. I want to save the Darkness Energy for my Umbreon that's on the bench. This way, if my opponent hits another Enhance or Crushing Hammer, I still have a way of being able to go for a Shadow Bullet the very next turn. And yeah, I mean, unless my opponent hits like a Max Elixir Energy Switch and a DCE, which I really doubt he's running Energy Switch or Max Elixir in this deck, by knocking out his Umbreon, I will have his energy off the board so he can strafe if he wants to, but otherwise that won't be too big of a deal. Olympia really will just heal off some stuff, and okay, I draw into a bunch of Rowlet. I'm okay with this. We see the DCE come down onto my opponent's Umbreon. What I might do is just Lysandre that thing in, play a couple Rowlets down, because, I mean, Lord knows I have all my Dartrix and Decidueye in the deck. But, I mean, okay, either way, I'm in a very, very good spot. He does Kukui. Oh, okay, good. My opponent does not have a draw supporter, just has to draw a pass. I have a VS Seeker. So what I might Olympia. I might Olympia to put myself out of range of Shadow Bullet. But let's go ahead and put 20 damage onto this Yveltal. This way, okay, so Yveltal has a 2 retreat cost, right? This way, my opponent has to put a DCE onto it, or a Float Stone in order to be able to retreat it. I like this, because what I can do right now is Olympia, put my Umbreon out of Shadow Bullet range, and then just retreat back into this. Shadow Bullet put 110 onto the Yveltal, put it in range of 1 Feather Arrow next turn, and then just hit the Umbreon for a little bit more damage. This way I can take a prize. I can also power up completely my Umbreon on the bench at the same time, and then I can Sycamore, hopefully draw into Decidueye. My opponent does Delinquent. I mean, that's not a big deal. That really isn't. Yeah, it gets rid of my hand. But, I mean, I have Umbreon on the bench that can Strafe. I have an Umbreon that can Shadow Bullet this turn. Even have another Darkness Energy. So let's go ahead and Feather Arrow, knock out this Yveltal, be within 1 prize of winning this game, or be within 1 GX knockout of winning this game. And as soon as my opponent promotes his Umbreon-GX, I pretty much have the game won. Let's go ahead and play the Darkness onto my Umbreon, just in case, and then Shadow Bullet, knock out the Vaporeon, and put 30 more onto the Umbreon. I think put it in range of Shadow Bullet. Yes, it is now in range of Shadow Bullet. Get a Trainer's Mail off the prizes. And even if my opponent Dark Calls away my my energy on this Umbreon, I mean, I have enough to where I have enough energy on board to where I will be able to attack with at least 1 Umbreon. If he Dark Calls away both energy off the active, I have the DCE in my hand to be able to Shadow Bullet. If he manages to, like, Crushing Hammer, Enhanced Hammer away, I basically had enough outs to where I still would have been able to win the game, at the very least by just strafing repeatedly if it came down to that. However, you did see I had the DCE in my hand, would have been able to Shadow Bullet, again, no matter what my opponent did, unless he did Crushing Hammer and Dark Call to get rid of all energy on my active. But yeah, I mean, that's the deck. It's a really, really cool deck, and when I saw that people were using Espeon Decidueye, I was like, well, why aren't people using Umbreon Decidueye? And after using this deck, I'm actually questioning that a little bit more myself, because this is a really, really cool deck. Do I think it's top tier? Probably not, but it definitely is a solid deck that can catch some people off guard if played correctly. So thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and this is Styx signing out. Why not? See you guys.